Welcome to Experimental, the science show that explains why dogs watch TV, women pee in the snow, and how going to bed in rubber just might make you slim. Later on, we'll be torturing teenagers with high-pitched sound and trying not to torture a Scotswoman by using helium to improve the sound of bagpipes. But first, let's head down under for a bit of canine vision. Australia, where veterinary scientist Paul McGreevy at the University of Sydney and his dog Wally have discovered something amazing. If you want to know what a dog sees, look at the length of his nose. Until now, many scientists believed that all dogs had the same eyes and saw the world the same way. But start measuring dogs' skulls and it soon becomes obvious that you can't cram a big dog's eyes into a little dog's head.
So what we did, we compared the eye volumes of different dogs. And for instance, here's an eye from a Maltese, which is a toy breed, and here's an eye from a Rottweiler. You can see that there's a fairly appreciable difference in volume between the Rottweiler and the Maltese.
Having shown that dogs' eyes differed in size, McGreevy started looking for other differences inside the eyes. What he found could help to explain why different breeds behave in different ways. In the back of the eye are light-sensitive layers of vision cells called the retina. In humans, these cells are concentrated in a single spot known as the fovea. So we see lots of detail in the centre of our vision. It was assumed that all dogs have what's known as a visual streak, a line of vision cells running across the eye. This streak gives dogs a much wider field of view than humans and allows them to detect movement better. But McGreevy discovered that all dogs were not the same.
What really surprised us was that some dogs didn't even have a visual streak. Instead, they had a concentration of cells in the centre of their eyes called an area centralis.
So some dogs had an area centralis similar to a human fovea. But when McGreevy compared the data from his microscope work with his measurement of skull size, he noticed something even more amazing.
When we cross-checked the information about the visual streaks with the information about the skull shapes, we were really surprised because all of the dogs that had no visual streak had really short noses. In contrast, the dogs with long noses had beautiful long visual streaks.
If McGreevy is right, then you can work out what a dog sees just by looking at the length of his nose. Experimental decided to put this theory to the test. Wally is joined by two friends. Cinnamon, a pug, has a very short nose. Sebastian is a Saluki and has an extremely long nose. Wally's snout lies somewhere in the middle. Test 1. How will each dog fare in our trial of peripheral vision? While the owners encourage their dogs to look straight ahead, our assistant will sneak up behind them and drop a marker when she's noticed.
Huh?
Cinnamon the pug didn't see our assistant until she was almost beside him. No chance of sneaking up on a Saluki, though. And Wally spotted her early as well. So short-nosed dogs, bad peripheral vision. Long-nosed dogs, good peripheral vision. Test 2. We borrowed a dog track to see which of our four-legged friends will respond to a fast-moving object. No surprise there, Salukis were bred by the ancient Egyptians to hunt gazelle. Wally is no slouch either, but I don't think he's going to catch that hare. And now for Cinnamon. Oh dear. He hasn't even seen the rabbit. It's all a bit of a blur. Better go for a lie down. So, 2 out of 3 tests done, and Cinnamon the pug is not having a lot of luck. There must be something pugs are good at. Yes, at last, Cinnamon is triumphant. Sebastian doesn't show any interest in the TV at all. And as for Wally, well, it probably wasn't his favourite channel. But short-nosed pugs have a narrow field of view, see lots of detail, and aren't distracted by things going on around them. Perfect for watching television. Wally and Sebastian, meanwhile, would much rather go and play in the park.
This sort of information can help us understand a bit about the dog's behaviour. Short-nosed dogs are concentrating on things right in front of them. Long-nosed dogs are scanning the horizon, the periphery, and they don't tend to stare at their owners the same way that short-nosed dogs do.
So human vision allows McGreevy to see the entire span of Sydney Harbour Bridge. And if you've got a longer-nosed dog like Wally, he'll see a lot more. Before we offer the fatties amongst you the ultimate calorie uncontrolled diet, let's get all Highland at the test department. What a cliche. Scottish melodies and images of the Highlands. Let's see if the test department can spice things up with the application of some science. That's right. We've crossed Old Lang Syne with a balloon full of helium. But why does Mary's voice sound like Donald Duck kicked in the groin? It's all to do with the speed of sound. In air, sound travels at around 350 metres per second. But in helium, it's around 1,000 metres per second. This totally changes the resonances in the throat, effectively raising the pitch. But what would helium do to bagpipes? Let's see. Not a great improvement there, then.
And it's not just the noise that's bad. Breathing helium can kill you. So don't do it at home.
Still to come on Experimental, how to empty a room full of Welsh kids and light a fire with hot air. But first, a question much asked by Inuit and mountaineers. Why is it that cold weather makes you want to pee? Let's leave the sauna and find out. As you get cold, the blood flows from the surface and into the centre of your body. As a result, the kidneys receive more blood and become more active. But that's not all. Cold weather reduces the amount of sweating. And that could mean even more liquid needing to find a way out each hour. And ultimately, it will find a way out. Welcome to one of the biggest problems of the 21st century. No, not food, obesity. The result of too much of the stuff. It's so bad that now 65% of Americans are overweight. But if scientists at Washington University in St. Louis are right, there could soon be a revolutionary new way of getting rid of all that flab by living in a germ-free environment. Of course, life in a bubble may cause a few other problems with the social life, and you won't exactly be showing off that wonderful new figure. But there may be one really big advantage to this new diet. You see, the boffins of Washington University believe that living in germ-free bubbles like these mice might allow you to eat more while still losing weight. And that's what Dr. Jeffrey Gordon and his colleagues are trying to prove.
We wanted to determine whether the bacteria that live in our guts that influences our predisposition to leanness or obesity.
Germs are a nasty name for bacteria, most of which are quite friendly.
Hi.
So friendly that the average human will have around 100 trillion individual bacteria living quite happily in their gut, a whole lot weighing in at around 1.5 kilos. Dr. Gordon's theory was that the germs in the guts of mice help extract calories from the food they eat and transfer it into fat. And to prove it, he needed to work with a strain of germ-free mice with no bacteria in their gut at all. For the squeamish, now is the time to make that cup of tea. When in the womb, embryos are totally germ-free. To keep them that way, scientists had to perform caesarean sections on their mothers, delivering them into sterile bubbles and then feeding them by hand with germ-free milk. Eventually, they had a colony of totally germ-free mice. But did his slimming theory work?
What we found was pretty amazing. The germ-free mice ate more food, but were leaner than their conventionally raised counterparts.
They proved this by feeding two groups of mice with the same food. As well as his sterile mice in their germ-free environment, Dr. Gordon raised a second group, with their guts full of germs in similar sealed balloons. Both lived the life of couch potatoes, doing little more than eat and eat and eat. After a few weeks, the germ-free mice were still slim and trim, but those with a gut full of bacteria were distinctly plump. As a final check on those results, Dr. Gordon's team took some of those germ-free mice out into the big bad world and infected them with some of the bacteria found in the guts of their fat friends.
We found that if you add a microbial community to those germ-free mice, they rapidly and very dramatically gain fat, even though they're eating less.
Although it's mice, not men, we're talking about, our guts and the bacteria in them are roughly the same. So, if the bacteria in our guts is helping to make us fat, then switching to a germ-free life while still eating a high-calorie diet might just be the next big thing. Or perhaps not. Living in a bubble might take too much of the fun out of life to be worth it. Still to come on Experimental, a solution to this man's drink problem. How this little tube led to the diesel engine, and we'll get the chance to zap some Welsh kids with high-pitched sound.
Oh my god!
But first... At the test department, Horace is trying to look cool by the pool, but there's something on his mind. The length of his snorkel. Would he be even cooler if he could make it longer? The principle behind the snorkel is devilishly simple. It's a tube that allows you to breathe with your face underwater. Dive any deeper and you'll normally use scuba gear. But why couldn't you use a longer tube? Impressive snorkel. Now let's try it. Oh dear, not so cool. It all seems to have gone wrong. But why? Well, it's all to do with the weight of water. Go down more than about 1.5 metres, and the weight of water pushing on your body is so great that your lungs cannot expand against it, making breathing impossible. Which is why a normal snorkel is only about 30 centimetres long. Dive any deeper and you need scuba gear, which automatically regulates the pressure of air coming out of the tank, allowing you to breathe safely. So Horace, science has proved that it's better to have a short one that works than a long one that no one can suck on.
Don't try this at home.
Yet to come on Experimental, how the demise of the audio cassette saved this man's beer. And a chance to go camping with the test department. But first, let's annoy some kids.
You all hear that? Yeah. Because I can.
Right. All hear that? I can hear that as well. Yeah. Be honest.
Experimental has travelled to South Wales to meet a man with a fantastic method of getting up kids' noses.
That's horrible.
Jackpot.
That's really annoying.
Worse still, Howard Stapleton, acoustics whiz kid, seems to enjoy it. But before we condemn him, he is doing it for a reason.
Oh my god!
Outside Howard's immaculate front room, it's a war zone. Gangs of hooded teenagers have taken over the street, and no one over 21 feels safe to venture out. That's a load of old rubbish, actually. This is Newport, South Wales, where the teenagers simply hang around outside supermarkets and smoke the occasional cigarette. But that was enough to put Howard off getting his bread and milk.
Last summer holidays, my local shop was having particular problems with a gang of teenagers hanging around outside the shop, especially late into the evening. One night I went up there to buy my milk and not even I would walk through them. I approached the shopkeeper the following day and said, "I've got an idea, can I try it out?" And he said yes.
The big idea was this. A speaker emits an annoying buzz that only teenagers can hear. It exploits the fact that as you grow older, your ability to hear really high sounds deteriorates. So whilst a teenager might be deafened by really high sounds, an older person won't be able to hear a thing.
Let's have a look.
Don't believe us? Well, let's check out Howard's little box of tricks.
That's 12 kilohertz, I can still hear that clearly. 15, I'm aware of it. As I run up to 16, and then we're up to around about the 17 thereabouts, which the mosquito system uses. And that is a frequency that someone with young hearing does hear very clearly.
The idea is simple, but it took Howard a year to come up with a system that really annoyed the young ears of Newport. But once his prototype was fixed to the wall of his local shop, the results were dramatic.
Well, the first few days, kids were asking about the noise and saying, could we turn it off? And then they just sort of disappeared. And I thought it was a coincidence. They must have gone, there was another reason for it, but they haven't come back.
Experimental was keen to talk to a teenager about the effects of Howard's little box. But we couldn't find one. So we had to talk to some people who'd never heard it working.
To be fair, since the machine is out, but, I've noticed, a vast difference.
There used to be, especially around that area there, gangs of kids at night, drinking and all sorts. But it's definitely sorted that out.
Right, here we go. It's nice high frequency, and what I want you to do is each one of you can hear the noise. Will you put your hand up in the air?
Howard now wants to make a portable device to help police clear the streets of young people.
Oh my god.
You don't like that, do you? No, that's cool.
However, he's having problems with his research guinea pigs.
Hello.
In a moment, we'll be off to Holland to create the perfect beer with a defunct cassette system. But first, let's rough it a bit with that nice girl from the test department. Welcome to the Test Department School of Unlikely Survival Skills, in which we test one of the oldest fire-making methods known to man, or in this case, woman. No, not rubbing sticks, but the Malaysian fire piston. As used by Malaysians and other Southeast Asian peoples before they bought matches. How does it work? Take one piece of tinder and place it at the bottom of the tube. Stick the piston on and give it a good hard whack, and lo and behold, the tinder ignites. What's happening is, as the air in the cylinder is compressed by the piston, it heats up, ultimately getting so hot that the tinder is ignited. Is this just an odd but useless piece of science? Well, no. It's exactly the same principle as used in a diesel engine, where diesel is squirted into a cylinder full of air which is compressed by the piston until it ignites. Mind you, for lighting fires, the fire piston does take a lot of practice, so you'd be better off with matches, so long as it's not too windy. Finally on Experimental, a nice cool drink. Experimental has headed to Lieshout in the Netherlands. Like many Dutch towns, it's got a canal, pretty houses, and some bars where men meet to discuss their problems over beers that are rattled off the production line of the local brewery only hours before. The same family has been brewing beer here for over 300 years, and now it's Wietse van den Boogaard who's stirring the hops in the copper vats.
It's my passion to brew beer. I like the brewing, I like the drinking, I like the product, I like the bars where the beer is. So, yeah, that's the passion, huh?
But there is one thing about his lovely brew he hates, and that's the fact that when he pours his nectar fresh from the tap, it's all cloudy and tastes yeasty. Traditionally, brewers have turned to a powder made of Cretaceous algae to filter the nasties out. It's called Kieselguhr, and Wietse doesn't like it.
But in Kieselguhr you have some problems of safety requirements because it's very dusty. And it's a waste material, it's only for one-way use.
Brew 1 week's worth of beer, and you'll have to get rid of 9,000 kilos of Kieselguhr sludge, which environmentalists hate. But no more. You see, just last year, Wietse met another man with a problem down at his local bar. Peter Segal was a research scientist for electronics giant Philips, who dropped in to drown his own problems.
I've been an engineer with Philips now for many years. And the last job I had is to lead the technical side of a big project that was really started by Philips to create a digital audio recording system called DCC.
DCC should have been a surefire winner for Philips. In 1963, they brought out the audio cassette, which soon became almost as essential in a car as its engine. The digital compact cassette was simply a digital version of their old money spinner. It could play and record CD-quality digital tapes, as well as the old audio cassettes. Sadly, no one wanted tape anymore, digital or analogue. They wanted discs. So the whole £1 million tape project was canned in 1996, just 4 years after its launch.
Unfortunately, it was a technical success, great technical success, but even bigger commercial flop.
The key to DCC was recording heads with tiny holes blasted through them. To make them, silicone wafers are coated with thin layers of silver nitrate and a photosensitive lacquer, then fed into a wafer stepper, a specialised machine that projects a pattern of dots on the material and then uses a laser to cut out over 5 billion holes, exactly 1 micron deep. Brilliant. But after the demise of DCC, absolutely useless.
So many people, so enthusiastically, put in so much effort to develop this technology. And I felt it would have been such a shame if that was not going to be used. And I was absolutely convinced there must be an area where we can make a breakthrough product with this breakthrough technology. And we found one.
That's right. While sipping his troubles away in the bar with Wietse, Peter realised that he had the solution to the beer brewer's problems. That defunct DCC technology was just what Wietse needed to get rid of the clouds in his beer. All he had to do was bin the Kieselguhr and replace it with silicone filters from Peter's old cassette player. And bingo, his nectar flowed amber.
The beauty of this product that it's so simple. It's a kind of digital filter. If you pour fluid over it, particles that are smaller simply go through it, and particles that are just a little bit bigger do not go through.
And that's the beauty of the filter. Those yeast particles that cloud up the beer are just too big to squeeze through the holes. The result is the amber nectar that Wietse has always dreamed of. But did it taste any better? Well, we thought we'd ask an independent expert, Carl, our sound recordist. Unfortunately, he proved incapable of doing 2 things at once and left his microphone switched off. So you'll have to guess his opinion from his facial expressions. But we think it's a thumbs up for digital beer.